In today's talk, we will look at the characteristics of periodic transformation and then arrive at an equation for its growth rate. Periodic transformation is a consequence of eutectoid reaction. Eutectoid reaction is associated with a single solid phase, say gamma, undergoing decomposition into two solid phases, say alpha and beta. Peroxide consists of alternate laminae of alpha and beta growing synchronously and cooperatively into the gamma phase. This is illustrated here. So this is alpha phase lamina and this is beta phase lamina, and both of them are synchronously moving towards the gamma phase, thereby consuming the gamma phase. So the transformation of gamma converting into alpha plus beta is occurring. In steels, peroxide is a product of the decomposition of arsenic by a eutectoid reaction and comprises a lamellar arrangement of ferrite and cementate. The schematic diagram here indicates that peroxide grows as nodules on the prior astatic boundaries. These are the prior astatic boundaries. And each nodule may have different colonies or orientations, and that the nodules spread over to cover their prior astenate grain boundaries. By changing the reaction temperature, the spacing or length scale of the peroxide product can be changed by branching of cementate. So you can see the branching of cementate here. So you have got a cementate laminar plate from which another plate has nucleated. A peroxide colony is a region of a peroxide nodule within which the ferrite and cementate grow in the same direction. Nodules, which is roughly spherical in shape, may contain several colonies with different growth directions. The structure of a colony of peroxide is shown in this micrograph. The crystallographic orientations of the ferrite and cementate are essentially identical at all locations. This can be seen here in the stereographic triangle. The arrows indicate here, say for example in this particular instance, or show a low misorientation boundary between adjacent colonies. So this is one colony here, and this is entire thing is another colony, and this is a third colony, and so on and so forth. So the orientation of cementate in one colony is different from orientation in others. Say for example, here the colony takes this direction here, cementate in this colony takes this particular direction, and cementate takes a totally different orientation in this colony. The two phases within a perlite are each connected in 3 dimensions, and this was demonstrated by Dippenaar and Honeycomb by serial section. According to them, an individual perlite colony is best visualized as an interpenetrating bicrystal of cementite and ferrite. The perlitic transformation is a civilian transformation, and it occurs on cooling below what is known as the critical temperature, known as the Eutectoid temperature. The civilian transformations are typified by a C-shaped time temperature transformation curves. A typical growth curve as a function of time. Growth F here is the fraction transformed. Here F corresponds to the fraction converted into perlite. This F varies from 0 to 1, and this is plotted as a function of logarithm of time of transformation. So this curve shows two curves, one at a higher temperature T1 and another at a lower temperature T2. So typically the civilian transformations such as this possess what is known as an incubation period. So this is the incubation period for the reaction at T2, and at a higher temperature you have got a greater incubation time. And then once the rapidity with which transformation occurs is less at a higher temperature close to the eutectoid temperature, and it becomes faster at T2. So this can be, so this interval, when you have got say 0.5% of conversion of austenite into perlite, and then let this point be around 99%. So between the time elapsed between this is represented here. This is the interval at T2, and the corresponding interval of time is somewhere here, and you have got a large interval. So this is locus for TTD curve for 1% transformation of austenite into perlite, and this is a curve for 99% of transformation of perlite into austenite into perlite. And at temperature close to the TE, that is here, this is the TE temperature, eutectoid temperature. The time course for the transformation is very small, so, and the differences in the free energies of the austenite and the product phases put together depends upon the degree of undercooling. So here you have got a smaller degree of undercooling. So consequently the nucleation rate here at T1 is substantially lower than when the undercooling is larger. Say, as a consequence, the nucleation rate at T2 is larger. So the reaction is slow by virtue of smaller undercooling at temperature close to equilibrium transformation temperature. But what will happen at a significantly lower temperature is diffusion of alloying elements becomes slower, and so consequently the transformation is rapid at intermediate temperatures. A maximum rate that is therefore obtained at intermediate temperatures. Perlite adopts a spiky form at lower temperatures that can be mistaken for bainite. This unusual shape is due to the breakdown of the cooperative growth, and the ferrite advances more rapidly into the austenite than the cementite, which becomes discontinuous, so the structure is no longer laminar. The spiked perlite is formed by a reconstructive mechanism. Again, so in this micrograph, the steel with a composition of 0.79% carbon and 0.98% manganese by weight percentage was transformed at 550 degrees Celsius. The dark etching spiky form of perlite, so there is no regularity in parallelism between the ferrite and cementite. So the growth of this spiky perlite doesn't involve a common transformation front. So one of the characteristics of reconstructive transformations is when the transformation takes place, no surface upheavals are noticed. This is true with perlite transformation also. So this slide shows the microstructures that are produced when austenite is transformed, austenite of different carbon concentrations is transformed. The A shows the austenite, original austenite microstructure. You can notice some twinning here, and so this is a single phase austenite. Suppose you consider a pure iron at a temperature slightly less than 912 degrees Celsius. So that is the A3 temperature for the alloy, for the metal. So consequently, so you have got a single phase iron converting into what is known as a ferrite. So there is no cementite is involved in this process. And then this particular micrograph corresponds to a hypoeutectoid steel containing 0.38% carbon, and the temperature is below the eutectoid temperature of 727 degrees Celsius. You can notice that a pro-eutectoid ferrite, which appears white here, has already formed, and so consequently there is some carbon partitioning has occurred with the rejection of carbon from this ferrite phase into neighboring austenite, so pushing the concentration towards the equilibrium for corresponding to equilibrium eutectoid composition. So consequently the remaining portions of austenite in the microstructure, they have converted into the perlite in this situation. So this is a pro-eutectoid ferrite, and this particular phase mixture is essentially that of perlite. Then if you have a eutectoid composition of carbon, so in a plain carbon steel having 0.8% carbon, steel at a temperature less than the eutectoid temperature, so what will happen is you will see that the laminar arrangement of the perlite, mostly the amount of perlite is very high, and it nearly around 90% or so, and these white areas are some ferrite which is formed prior to the formation of the perlite. The last micrograph corresponds to iron containing 1.4% carbon steel, and the transformation has occurred at a temperature lower than the eutectoid temperature. So a pro-eutectoid cementite phase has already formed along the grain boundaries. The pro-eutectoid cementite phase is also at etching, and so as this forms, so the carbon is depleted from 1.4% carbon to a lower value. So as carbon diffuses from the austenite to grow the cementite phase, which contains 6.67% carbon. So consequently the average carbon percentage here moves towards the eutectoid composition. So consequently when this particular alloy is homogenized at a temperature lower than the eutectoid temperature, so the remaining portions where the cementite hasn't occurred, they convert into a perlitic structure. So here are some morphological facts about the perlite transformation. Nodules of perlite have irregular shapes that deviate significantly from idealized spheres. The shape necessitates the branching of cementite as the nodule size increases. Growth occurs in all directions, so in the absence of impingement, it would be necessary for the cementite lamella to branch in order to maintain a spacing that is on average constant or uniform. Individual cementite lamella are not uniform in thickness and exhibit significant perturbations in shape. Perturbation is a deviation or disturbance. In two-dimensional sections, there are discontinuities in the cementite lamella, even though there is no change in the spacing ahead of the break. So, nucleation of perlite. Perlite is a mixture of two phases, both of which are required to establish the cooperative growth that leads to the laminar structure. The predominant sites for heterogeneous nucleation of perlite in most steels are the original austenite grain boundaries. It is commonly assumed that the process begins with the nucleation of ferrite in hypo-eutectoid steels, that means steels having lower carbon than eutectoid carbon, and again similarly nucleation occurs first by the first to nucleate in the case of hyper-eutectoid steels is cementite. And so this is the commonly assumed motion. So again we have got the free energy change which is plotted as a function of temperature. Here I have got gamma prime, that refers to gamma prime refers to austenite with composition altered due to the formation of alpha or theta. Say for example, from original gamma, if theta is separating, then the remaining portions of gamma will have a different carbon concentration because theta is rich in carbon. So as the driving force for transformation is increasing as you move from top to bottom. Here free energy change is plotted in joules per gram. So this is the free energy change for nucleation or separation of theta from gamma, and the driving force for in this region, the driving force for separation of alpha from original gamma is given by this field. So consequently, and this given as a function of temperature. So consequently, at a high temperature, so close to the transformation eutectoid temperature, you have got both phases, they have got nearly same free energy, but that free energy change is small. But as temperature is lowered, so it is the driving force for separation of alpha from gamma is more. So, and this is the driving force for separation of formation of alpha and theta from original gamma. So the free energy change associated with the decomposition of austenite as a function of temperature in a binary iron carbon alloy shown in this picture. A, this is for eutectoid composition, 0.76 weight percent carbon. B is for hypereutectoid steel containing 1 weight percent carbon. This figure shows that up to the eutectoid composition, the driving force for ferrite precipitation from austenite is far greater than that for cementate. Okay. In hypereutectoid steels, there is no driving force for the precipitation of ferrite alone from austenite at small undercoolings. Okay. However, with increasing undercooling, the driving force for precipitation of alpha from gamma is more than the driving force for precipitation of theta from gamma. Now the growth of pearlite. The pearlite transformation steel is unique in having both a source and sink for solute that is partitioned into the austenite. Cementate is rich in carbon, contains 6.67% carbon by weight percent, and whereas ferrite is very low in carbon, so consequently it doesn't accommodate much of carbon. Then, so whether it is in equilibrium with cementite or austenite. So consequently it is necessary for carbon to be redistributed at the carbon transformation front that alpha theta phases have with the parent austenite. So this is the picture. So I have got alpha, and this is theta cementate, and this is gamma. So consequently redistribution occurs here in front of the growing interface within the austenite. In a binary iron carbon system, the cementate would absorb all the carbon that is partitioned into the austenite by the growth of ferrite. Ferrite can grow only if carbon is removed, so that the composition of ferrite is becomes equal to its equilibrium value of 0.02% by weight. So all that carbon is removed into the austenite. So consequently, the austenite in the austenite, the carbon concentration builds up in front of the growing ferrite particle, and the growth of theta involves diffusion of carbon atoms so that it can grow and have a composition equal to 6.61% carbon. So consequently, the high buildup of carbon, the relative, so the theta acts as a sink for carbon, and then alpha acts as a source for carbon, but the transfer direction of carbon is given by these two arrows. So carbon essentially moves from ferrite to cementate, and the transfer moves by diffusion in the austenite at the interface between the growing two-phase lamina and the parent austenite. So in a binary iron carbon system, the cementite would absorb all the carbon that is partitioned into the austenite with the growth of ferrite. This can happen by diffusion through the adjacent austenite in a direction parallel to the transformation front, and also by flux of carbon through the transformation interface. This is JB. So there is therefore no net accumulation of carbon in the austenite, leading to a constant growth rate. The proportion of ferrite and cementite within the colony is determined by the average carbon concentrations of the austenite, C gamma, together with the compositions C gamma theta and C gamma alpha at the transformation temperature. So what is C gamma theta? It is the carbon concentration in the austenite in front of the cementite particle. Similarly, C gamma alpha is the carbon percentage of in austenite in front of the growing ferrite particle. So this is when you undercool it, the phase changes can be explained by considering what is known as extrapolated phase boundaries to identify the concentrations in the austenite which is in equilibrium with the cementite or ferrite. So C gamma theta is the carbon concentration in austenite in front of cementite particle. Likewise this. So the region below the electrolyte temperature where the thermodynamic condition for the simultaneous formation of both the cementite and ferrite is satisfied is often referred to as the Hultgren extrapolation region, and this is the region extrapolated region. You can extend like this here, similarly like this here. So you can, even though you have got a non-detectoid composition of the steel, it is possible that you can get 100% perlite if the composition and the temperature combinations are such that they lie within this extrapolated Hultgren region. As long as C gamma theta is less than C gamma is less than C gamma alpha is true, the austenite can transform completely into perlite even though C gamma does not correspond to the eutectoid composition. In a TTT diagram for a hyper-eutectoid steel, ferrite formation would not have to proceed precede the formation of perlite. So that means it need not occur prior to the formation of perlite. Once, so if you can undercool somehow the steel into this, and the steel is hypoeutectroid steel containing less carbon than 0.8%, which corresponds to eutectroid composition. So if you can undercool that rapidly enough, so then you can suppress the formation of pro-eutectroid ferrite, and then it is possible to form 100% perlite in it. So again the condition is the same here. C gamma theta less than or equal to C gamma less than or equal to C gamma alpha. So this is, so it has to be somewhere here. So consequently, if you have a condition where C gamma theta, this composition somewhere here is more than C gamma, then it is the condition is good enough to form ferrite and perlite. But if this condition C gamma theta is less than or equal to C gamma, and which is less than or equal to C gamma alpha is met, then it is possible to form 100% perlite in the microstructure. So this is again is a TTT curve for a hypoeutectroid steel. Now we look at schematically a growing perlite colony. The dashed arrows indicate diffusion paths here. This is a diffusion path for the carbon, either through the austenitic ahead of and parallel to the interface, or through the gamma to theta and gamma to alpha interfaces. So the interface thickness here, delta B. Interfaces are assumed to be of a uniform thickness delta B. This is the interlaminar spacing. So this which comprises of one unit of theta phase, that is cementite, and one unit of ferrite alpha phase. So this is the yes. And the S interface theta. So this is the thickness of theta and this is the thickness of alpha. S is the sum of this plus this. S is the interlaminar spacing. This diagram represents a simplified view of the three-dimensional structure of perlite. Here the growth is conceived as one-dimensional advancement of growth front. Figure illustrates a growth process in which all the flushes are shown essentially parallel to the transformation front. JB being via the austenite ahead of the front. So it is diffusion is taking inside the austenite, but it is occurring ahead of this interface. And JB through the average interface between the austenite and perlite. So this is the JB is how it is occurring. So it is The proportion of ferrite and cementite is determining the average carbon concentrations of austenite. So that is C gamma, and the equilibrium carbon concentrations of ferrite and cementite. So C alpha theta. So what is the equilibrium concentration here? So a carbon concentration of alpha in equilibrium with theta phase. Similarly, these are equilibrium concentrations. Similarly, this C theta alpha is carbon concentration of cementite phase in equilibrium with alpha respectively. So we can employ the lever rule, and so consequently, so it is one dimensional growth front. So consequently we have S alpha by S is equal to, lever rule is, so it has to be carbon of we are considering alpha which is on left side, and the concentration of carbon of the theta phase need to be considered, which is there on the right side. So that is carbon, so that is how the lever rule works. So C theta alpha minus C gamma, that is the intercept made on the vertical axis towards the right, divided by the whole intercept, that is C theta alpha minus C alpha theta. This gives essentially the ratio of S alpha, the thickness of alpha lamina, and to the overall thickness of perlite lamina. Yes. Similarly, S theta by S is 1 minus S alpha by S. So consequently, so we can work it out as this is equal to C gamma minus C alpha theta by C alpha theta alpha minus C alpha theta. And the volume fraction of theta is equal to S0 by S. The diffusion distance parallel to the interface is taken as AS, where A is a constant. Assuming that the diffusion flux through austenite is entirely volumetric, the rate at which solute is partitioned per unit area of the transformation front from alpha phase and absorbed into the cementite theta phase must be the same. So consequently, whatever all the atoms which are partitioned, which are moved away from alpha phase, they must be absorbed into the cementite phase. There is no net gain of carbon concentration in the austenite. So this partitioning is taking place, or diffusion is taking place in the austenite phase. Let V be the linear velocity of the growth front. The amount of carbon partition into gamma from alpha. So consequently, first there has to be motion of carbon atoms from alpha to the gamma. So this is how the amount of carbon partitioning is given by V is the growth front multiplied by the area here. So area ratio, that is S alpha by S, multiplied by the differences in the concentrations, that is C gamma minus C alpha gamma. So this is the amount of carbon partitioned into gamma from alpha. This must be equal to the amount of carbon absorbed by theta. So again, when it absorbs carbon, the front of theta or cementite is also advancing. So consequently, the amount of carbon absorbed is equal to the velocity of growth front V multiplied by S theta by S. So you have got a smaller area fraction multiplied by C theta gamma minus C gamma. So both these terms are equal. So consequently we can equate this. So we have V into S theta by S multiplied by C theta gamma minus C gamma is equal to V into S theta by S multiplied by S alpha by S into C theta alpha minus C alpha theta. So the rate of solute partitioning must equal the rate at which solute C atoms are diffused per unit area of the interface. Hence, as a consequence, the right hand side of the previous equation, that is V into S theta by S multiplied by S alpha by S multiplied by C theta alpha minus C alpha theta, must be occurring by diffusion. So we use the Fick's law of diffusion. So diffusion coefficient of carbon in aconite, that is dC in gamma, multiplied by the differences in the concentration between C theta alpha, that means what is the carbon which is there in front of theta phase minus what C theta alpha is the carbon concentration in cementite in front of alpha minus C gamma theta by A into S. So A into S is what is known as the diffusion distance. So as a consequence, the growth rate is given as V is equal to diffusion constant of carbon in aconite gamma phase multiplied by S divided by S alpha and S theta and multiply by the fraction C theta alpha minus C gamma theta over C theta alpha minus C alpha theta. The implications of this equation are the following. The linear growth rate depends and increases inversely with the decreasing interlamellar spacing. Secondly, no limit is set for the maximum growth rate in this analysis. The analysis so far did not consider the energy consumed in the creation of aconite cementite boundary. A consequence of this energy term is that the interlamellar spacing cannot decrease definitely, and there is a critical spacing which is SC is equal to 2 sigma alpha theta. This is the interface surface energy, sigma alpha theta by delta G. Delta G is the free energy of transformation. Thus, the net free energy component available for diffusional growth is delta G net is equal to delta G, that is overall chemical free energy difference, minus 2 sigma alpha theta by S. So the critical interlamellar spacing S is defined as so when under the condition delta G net is equal to 2 sigma alpha theta by SC minus to sigma alpha theta by S. So consequently delta G net over delta G is equal to 1 minus SC over S. So what we are doing is we are accounting for a term of energy consumed in the creation of austenite cementate boundary. So consequently, less driving force is available for the growth of perlite than when we have considered when we did not consider the austenite cementate boundary. So consequently the equation for perlite growth is modified. P is equal to, again, diffusion coefficient of carbon in gamma phase multiplied by the interplanar spacing S divided by A into S alpha and S theta multiplied by the fraction C theta alpha minus C gamma theta minus C theta alpha minus C alpha theta. So up to this the entire term was same, and the growth could occur with very large values, but this now is the growth rate is reduced when we consider the fact that the process has to create austenite interface cementate boundary. So consequently the term multiplicative term which is introduced as a consequence is 1 minus SC by S. This equation gives the growth rate as a function of interlamellar spacing of perlite. So that is about the growth of perlite from austenite. How does the mechanical properties are affected? So the interlamellar spacing is a very useful parameter that will determine the mechanical properties. So if interlamellar spacing is larger, we call the perlite as aqueous perlite, and if the interlamellar spacing is small, then we call it as a fine perlite. And the third case is where there is the cementate is present in the microstructure and in the form of round particles or spheroids in the matrix of ferrite. So such a structure is called as spheroidite, and one of the problems with spheroidite is it has got low strength. By virtue of that, the reinforcing effect of cementate lamellar plate is missing, so consequently it tends to have a lower brittle hardness, and then but it tends to have higher ductility. So steels which have got so this plot shows schematically how the brittle hardness varies as a function of carbon concentration in hypo and hyper-eutectoid steels. So overall, for improving the brittle hardness, one way is to increase the carbon percentage and also reduce the interlamellar spacing of perlite, so that you end up having a fine perlite. So this curve shows how the brittle varies in the case of fine perlite, and then this is typically for coarse perlite. So you can get a brittle hardness value around 300 for if you have got a fine perlite, whereas it is around less than 240 for the quartz perlite. The spheroidite structure, microstructure, have considerably lower brittle hardness. When it comes to ductility, the spheroidite microstructure, because is considerably higher irrespective of the hardness, irrespective of the carbon concentration. Quartz perlite has got a decreasing ductility with increasing carbon percentage, and this decrease in ductility is somewhat more pronounced in the case of white perlite.